Welcome back to Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. This is Chat with Chad. I am your host, Chad Everett Broshears, and I'm with my special guest and friend, Joshua McClendon. So I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself. So welcome the world to Joshua McClendon.
How's it going, guys? I'm sure maybe some of our viewers know me, Chad. I know that we have, if you know anything about Chad and I, you kind of know how we met, kind of how it's actually, I think it's really cool how we're getting to do this because a few people, Chad, know me the way I was before, right? And you're one of them. So this will be very fun for you to everyone can kind of see, and maybe some people will get motivation out of it, or they'll get some kind of inner drive to do the same. And so I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah. And that's also one of the reasons why I asked that you do this with me is because from my history of knowing you, we've had we've had two main elements to our relationship, the working part of it and now the personal part of it.
Yep.
And seeing your growth and see what you're up to. And that's something that really it inspires me because sometimes it gets a little, we'll say it's not really lonely, but it kind of occurs in such a way that it's like you're just less related at times to other people.
Yeah.
But that's what I want, is to always be related to people.
Yeah.
I can get related with them, but not always them get related with me. Right. So I can, bring myself to where they're thinking, but, it's not always easy for them to do the same with me. It's just because of the way that, the way that my thoughts formulate. So, and I've appreciated that with you, especially where you're at now in the stage of your life. So with that, it's our topic for you today. Really fascinated and interested to see how you've been applying this in your life and to kind of give us a deeper insight. A lot of people have heard about positive thinking and or The Secret, right? Which is one of the popular movements for that. And it's we've got our views on it and our insights, and I definitely am looking forward to sharing those with you today. So,
Okay.
and our guests, our audience. So please.
All right.
Take it
So
away,
I guess we might as well just start where it all began, right? Okay. So let's go back. For me, I was born and raised in Georgia, right? I feel like whenever we do these, you got to give a little bit of a backstory so you know where you started and where you're at now, which, hopefully other people will relate to. So I was born and raised in Georgia. I lived in New Jersey for a little bit. My dad worked in New York City. So as a kid, I moved quite often. Things were always kind of changing. Once I went to Georgia State University, once I finished there, I kind of needed a new start. So I packed my car with everything I had. It was August 26, 2016. Packed my car, moved to live with my uncle in Seminole. My roommates were an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old for 6 months. I slept underneath the bunk bed. Okay, so I didn't have my own room. I shared a bedroom, with 2 kids, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at all. So I was starting to apply for some jobs, right? Got hired by Drew Bland, right? Who Drew, right? Got hired, worked in Clearwater at UFIT for, I think I was there for 2 years, right? 2 years. Yeah. And then now they moved us over, and what was it, October of 17 or 18, they moved us to 18. They moved us to Largo, to the new facility, and
18.
They moved us there, and I was always a busybody, and I never knew why. I always knew that. I was there 8 to 8 every single day. I was chasing something, but I didn't know what I was chasing. Okay, so it's funny because the law of attraction, people think that you think, and all of a sudden it's just going to appear. I like to relate it is that once you start to think positive, and you can see the pathways a lot better, because we're given a lot of pathways in our lives that we maybe don't see because we're so inside our own heads. You know what I mean? So it was COVID, right? COVID-19, August, what was it? No, it was March 17th is when they shut down UFIT. And I went home, that was my life. I was there all the time. I was used to being home maybe 2 hours in the evening time. My girlfriend, who I now live with, Danielle, she would, suffered through the 2 hours of, okay, I have zero time to do anything for myself. But I was so used to that normal. That's all I knew. So once COVID happened and I was forced to go home, and even forced when Danielle went back to work earlier than I did to really figure out like what am I doing here? You know, like what are my goals? Like what do I want to achieve? And that just kind of, it snowballed, you know, it snowballed.
Yeah. So what I like about it too is that the majority of people, because like you're saying, it's like you freed up, like as if you took off the blinders, right? You freed up your ability to perceive what was actually going on around you, right? So you saw other opportunities showing up because you weren't so stuck on the daily ins and outs of surviving, right?
Yep.
Paying your bills and, just taking on the habits that were just, structurally supportive of accomplishing being a trainer, right? And working in the industry. And then it's like, okay, well, now you got shook up a little bit as not having the job to go to, having the discipline that came with that, all of the things that came up with it. And it forced you to open up your sensory enough that you're able to perceive other opportunities, and throw out the idea that it put the feel goods in it, right? The positive thinking direction, which is, I can do these things. I can reach out outside of what I'm familiar with. It's like sitting in a room, and I've done this exercise when I'm working with some of my past clients that are like, if they're stuck in a situation, like they're like, well, this is a horrible experience that I went through. And now this isn't psychology, it's not counseling. It's developmental for me. It's like, go back to that moment and tell me what the room was like for you. Like this person made you angry, but did you go into the situation pre-frustrated, already with a stress level, concerns about your bills, your relationship, lacking confidence in who you were, where you were going, whether it was like external expressed lack of confidence, or if it was camouflaged behind, I am confident, but really deep down inside, they didn't feel it. And then now let's recreate that. What kind of temperature was it in the room for you? What was like the more detailed values to it now, and then be like, now that you have that experience yourself, is it possible that the person you were interacting with was living in a similar reality? Now was the event so bad? It still may have a negative outcome or undesirable outcome, but you don't need to live with that person renting space in your mind.
Exactly. Sometimes sometimes you can fail the test, but still learn the lesson, right?
Yes.
That's how I like it. Sometimes you can, you maybe not in the moment, or I love movies. So it's a line that always stuck with me in a movie. It was in The Matrix. And it was when the Oracle told Neo, know thyself. Do you remember? And I never really knew what that meant. I heard it, and most people, Chad, I know you agree, don't really know who they are. And honestly, they don't really care. They don't care. They're so consumed by these exterior motivations and just kind of, like you said, going with the flow and just kind of flowing with it, that they don't want to take the time to learn who they are,
Mm-hmm. And I want to add something to that too, right? Like, know yourself. Most people know the reflection of themselves off of other people's behaviors. And by the way, if you want to do a really interesting exercise, ask people what they can depend on you for, what they can't depend on you for, and who they know you to be, like to feel it out, like really to flesh you out without you leading anything other than asking those questions and wait for the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what do they know you to always be honest? Do they know you to always be dependable? Do they feel that you're self-motivated? It's like learning those things, but most of us only know ourselves by the way that we want other people to know us. But the reality is, it's like never even taking time to understand you.
Nope.
It's just fascinating. So what a powerful position to get an insight on yourself, because potency lies in the place of who you truly are.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Congruent.
If you think about our universe, I tell this to people all the time. If you look around, everything that you see, every item, it all came from within, because someone had to think of it, right? Someone had to be so in tune with who they were that they were able to kind of impact the exterior world in a sense, right? Whereas normally we're just, especially now with iPhones and the, social media, we're just consumers. We just consume content, right? That's all we do. We just take in. But the more that you, again, with the law of attraction, right? It's just like a phone. If you plug in, if I type a number or if I text you, you're going to get that message. Well, if you project into the universe negativity, you're going to get that message, right? That's all you're going to see, because you're, again, the blinders, right? So it's simple things that break down the big things, if that makes any
Absolutely.
sense. Yeah.
Well, and you can liken this to how relationships are created and maintained. It's like how many people have this desire that they be treated special, but yet they give no special treatment. So
Yeah.
like I need to be treated with honor, and or I need to, and the intimate relationship concepts, or at least the personal intimate relation concepts. You have like the boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the heck, whatever the orientation is, and have them, well, I want to find my king that's going to treat me like a queen. It's like this high expectation, but yet the delivery of what they want isn't congruent with how they behave with somebody else. Like the way they behave towards them. They want to be spoiled, but not spoil another.
Yeah.
Or even the idea that relationships are supposed to be, I'm spoiled, you're spoiled. So, but liken that to the business world, or liken that to creating a powerful and like a very, a self-destined life. You will get out of things what you put into it. But we've gotten so far drunk on self-worth that we think that, we're owed something more than what we actually are, because our fruit of our labor isn't there.
Exactly.
So it's, yeah. All right. I wanted to throw that in there.
Albert Einstein had a great quote. Okay. He said that imagination is everything. It is the preview to life's coming attractions. And so if you can't imagine you're going to do something, you're never going to do it. Right. If you can't even think you're going to do it, how do you expect other people to think you can do it?
Yeah.
That's the reason why, to be honest, I watched your show, it was the name. Okay. Growing up in the wilds of suburbia. So to me, Chad, what that means is that we always like to put people in certain arenas, right? Like we always love to judge what people struggle through based on, again, exterior, right? So maybe someone grew up in an area who, crime was much more regular than in suburbia, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people in suburbia don't suffer other kind of, the problems. Maybe they're not exterior problems, maybe they're interior problems. So that's what kind of, I love the name. So that was a motivator to get on here.
Thank you. By the way, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was a well thought out. It took time, and I'm like, I thought around it, and then it just hit me at a Starbucks in Clearwater, just sitting there, and I'm like, growing up in the wilds of suburbia, that sounds good. And I'm like, it fits what I want to talk about. And something that it's more pop culture type. So you've heard of Cobra Kai?
Yes.
And it's become more popular lately and all of that. I think the show itself overall, I mean, you can tell that it's low budget. You can tell that the people in it, that not everybody has like really well-developed acting careers, but there are certain highlights to their writing. So for the people that are familiar, the Cobra Kai it's the follow-up to the Karate Kid, and mainly the first movie.
Okay.
Right. So with that, this is now the new spin on what happened. So like, the bad guy, right? The bad sensei. And then you had the kid that he fought against. And so you've got the two main characters, right? You got I forgot their names. There's Daniel's son.
Right? And I forget the other guy's name.
Yeah. But he was the one that was the representative, like the best student of Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
And he got knocked out in the end because he did that the knee thing. And then he got, was it crane kicked in the face, and it was all over, right?
Yeah.
But what's really fascinating, and I think that they did this really well from a psychological perspective. The way that they introduced the Karate Kid was from Daniel's perspective, and his overcoming, growing up in poverty, and finally getting a good mentor that helped him learn to defend himself, build his confidence, that kind of thing. Now, later in his life, no spoilers, by the way, if you haven't watched it and you plan on it, you may want to pause this part or skip it. Give yourself a good 4 minutes and then come back to the video. But in it, with them switching places, right? Like it turns out that the kid that was the Cobra Kai head guy or whatever. Have you watched the show at all?
I have not watched the show. No.
You have not?
I've not.
Oh, yeah. You'll want to watch it after this. It's like I said, it's not necessarily the overall the best polished production, but it's entertaining, and it does get better as it goes through. But it does turn out, without giving you too many spoilers either, one, Daniel was in poverty in his youth, and the scripts are flipped on both of them.
Yes.
Daniel has been successful most of his life. He married his dream girl. He's got kids, he's got kids. The other guy, he came from money, the Cobra Kai guy, but it turns out that he had a horrible life. His stepfather didn't care for him, but he was a very wealthy man. And it's like, it really does illustrate some of the more true consequences of living another life. So just because some of us grew up in suburbia doesn't mean that we have not had, the different hardships. Now, I grew up in rural Florida, at Brooksville, the outskirts. My neighbors, like, we had to walk to see our neighbors. It was, we had cattle farms around us, stuff like that. So my brother actually made fun of the video, or the series name. He goes, Chad, you didn't grow up in suburbia. You grew up in rural Florida. And I'm like, he hasn't watched the videos. He just saw the title. So he's just my oldest surviving brother. He's a bit of a goofball at times. But the point of it was more of, we have this idea because we live in that state, right? Where we have that like concept, like middle class or whatever, but being an American in itself, even if you live at the poverty line, you're still part of the 1% of the world population.
It's true.
Because you have what the basic things are that you have privilege to, is what people that are wealthy in other countries, that's what they have, but other people have far less. I've seen some of the impoverished places in Mexico. You drive by a house and it's made of sticks and you can see straight through the house. Their water is kept in a container on the top of the house, and that's how they have their daily usage for water. Things like that. It's like, that's not what we see in America. So
no. What do they say? Most of the world lives on $3 a day, or like two-thirds of the world lives on $3 a day.
Yeah. And what we've done is we've thrown our hat over the fence, but it landed on the corporate fat cat, right? Or it landed on the ultra elite. And we're like, well, Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is going to be the first trillionaire first trillionaire ever, right? It's like, but people aren't thinking about all of what it took for him to get there, the sacrifices he made, the long days that he's worked, all of this stuff, the fighting through the negativity, wanting to quit whenever people would hate on him, the divorce that he went through, losing half of his fortune in the divorce. It's like all of these things, the man worked his ass off. Yep. But what we seem to omit is the same with the concept with like Michael Jordan. We look at where he is now in success, and we don't think about every single minute of the day, every year, that was this constant, pushing for excellence. But that goes into the positive thinking concept, which is, if you let doubt sink in, there's a chance that you're going to have doubt squash your dream. You have to be the inventor of your life.
Yep.
And that's something that you're obviously working on. So I know I've gotten a little long-winded here, but
no, it's okay. I relate, because we live in this world of instant gratification, instant information. So we expect our hard work to be instant. Now, I heard a quote once that said, I think it was a Tony Robinson quote, that most of the time, so Elon Musk, I look up to him a lot. He's probably my favorite entrepreneur. But Elon, before he made Tesla, he put years and years of work in that nobody saw, that only he saw. So again, like you said, it all draws back to that inner drive. If you don't believe you can do it, then when it's just you and it's 4 a.m. and you got up early because you got to put some side work in on this business you want to start, to then go work your full-time job, and then to come home and be a boyfriend or be a husband, be a dad, like, you got to have that drive. It's not fun. It's not fun. But you got to know that inside it's going to be worth it in the end.
Yeah. What it makes me like is I've had people do like fitness and wellness commitments, like contracts for themselves. And I don't mean like, okay, well, you're signing up for training for, whatever.
No,
I mean like you go home, you say, okay, this is the future I want to have. And you write a contract out for yourself that you will accomplish that. You will deliver on that. And that's something that it will supersede positive thinking, because positive thinking is, could be 80% of your ability, but the other 20% is going to have the reality that puts the negative or undesirable on you. But if you have that, I made a commitment to myself, like Jim Carrey did that with a paycheck, with a check, right? He wrote out I forgot what it was, like $1 million check or something like that, 6 million or something. And he's like, and by the date, and he kept it in his wallet, and he grinded. He wrote a contract to himself. So, and that's what we're talking about. But if most people need a tangible structure to assign it to, because
Yep.
if it's too esoteric, that's outside of their daily communications and their daily thinking patterns, it's hard for them to continuously conceive that it's possible, especially with other people around them that are willing to take the bench,
How
to
many
sit it out.
people, like, so if you were to add, like, let's say 10 people you asked to do this contract for themselves, to pick something that they want to achieve, no matter what it is, how many of them do you think would come up with it like that instantly? Do you
Yeah.
think more or less? Do you think, I think, to be honest, like we talked about in the beginning, most people don't, it's uncomfortable to think that way, to really dive into yourself and think, what do I want? Like, what's the whole point of life?
Yeah. You know, what I see is that people are more likely, what they do is they buy the dream without the work.
Yep.
And they don't even understand fully what the dream really is. I want to
Yep.
have a lot of stuff. I want to have financial freedom. If I were to get laid off, I'd be able to live the rest of my life without having to worry about money. You know, there's other things that go into those problems, that goes into life. Like this sense of purpose doesn't come from money for most people. You know, there's something else, a service to community. So that's how many people would really be able to give you a really deep and true answer. Now, Jordan Peterson is a psychologist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
I've heard his name before.
Yeah, he's written several books. One of his more noteworthy ones, or one of his more popular ones, is 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. And it's putting in the structure into people's lives. So with it, he has something that's called the Future Authoring Project. And it's something that he offers for free through his website. And you go there and he instructs you on how to do this. And all it is you become very clear about where you are, where you want to be. And because you're writing it out, you're filling out more details that really do matter that you don't think about.
Yep.
And then from there, you can start identifying your work.
Yep.
Once you understand your work, you can do something with it. But ignorance won't stop you.
Nope.
It's maybe the lack of motivation because of knowing you need to do something and you're just not resource available to do it. Your body's exhausted. You should redirect and say, I need a healthy body at that destination versus push through with all of this exhaustion, wear my body out further, maybe get to my goal, but my family can experience the joy out of it while I go through medical treatment to feel better.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but Jordan Peterson's Future Authoring Project, that is, it's fantastic. And it has shown a great deal of success for people, but that is what we're talking about. In its own sense, that's Jordan Peterson's version. To write a contract for yourself. What do you want to accomplish? Now, once we know where you, like, let's say Josh, where does Josh want to be? Like, what does he want to experience in life? And by what time does he want to experience it? And then from there, now, what do you know about getting there? What do you know you don't know? And then you start considering that there's going to be another demographic, another value in there. That is what you don't know,
Yes.
right? And then it's like, the only way you're going to be able to illuminate that space is by addressing the other two.
Yeah.
Is what I know I don't know. And then it starts, that's why people that are educated tell you it's fascinating that the more they learn, the more they realize they don't know. But that's them opening that Pandora's box of the unknown.
Do you know why? Do you know why Jeff Bezos called Amazon Amazon? It's a great example. I use this example all the time. So every decision we make, Chad, right? Every choice, like right now, it's a great example. If I asked you 4 years ago, you think me and you would be doing a podcast together, what would you say?
I'd be like, really? I mean, I'd be like, all right, but I would be like, really?
So he wanted to make something that flowed like the Amazon River, that was never ending. So when we make one decision, that decision is going to lead to another decision. It's almost like you're building these rivers of knowledge you didn't know, and the next thing you know, you're just engulfed by like learning. And I hope that I'm kind of putting that in the right way.
It's not like, so you know when you hear something and it makes sense, and then you hear something that makes sense, but you feel it.
Yes.
Right? So, but I'm taking stock of what I know about Amazon. And as you said, his intention was to create something that flows like the Amazon rivers. Yes, that's exactly what Amazon is now.
Yeah.
And I don't think he gets anywhere near the credit.
No.
But he also doesn't push it in your face that he's owed the credit.
Yeah.
So
it's so important to remember why we do things. If we always think about what we get, which I've done for most of my life, I've thought about, I know why I do things because I get the end result. But if you focus more so on why you do them, that end result, you're going to get 10 times more. It'll just be instant. It won't even, because you're not even focused on it. Again, you're focused on like, why is Apple such a great company? Apple doesn't focus on making the most money with their phones. They focus on helping teachers teach better. They focus on, helping businesses run better. They fix problems, right? And the entrepreneurship, it's about you fix problems. So if you can identify problems, then you'll have infinite ways to fix them, right? So it's all about getting to the point of why we do things.
Yeah. Well, the mother of invention is necessity.
Yes. Yep.
So and it's all ties into itself. Now, I can see just a windfall of success just based off the seed value of where your mind is at this point. Who Josh is going to be in the next 4 years is, to me, I can see that being highly impressive. I mean, you're already at that state of impressive just because of the way that you think, the way that you process things. Now, it's not just that you're stuck in the gear of optimism. It's something beyond that.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating. So good for you. How old are you now again, Josh?
29. I turned 29 in August, Chad. Yeah, I know. And it's like you said, by a certain time, we have these ideas of when we're supposed to do things by a certain time in our lives. So turning 39 next year is the 30, right? It's the big 30. It kind of probably gave me a little bit more motivation to kind of start getting my stuff together. And I want to lean back onto what you were just saying. I think the number one reason why most people don't venture down entrepreneurship or aren't free thinkers is because they live in the label that was given to them. For example, myself, right? When I knew you, I thought all I could do was be a trainer. I thought I was a trainer. So I labeled myself a trainer. Once you label yourself something, that's what you're going to be, right? So if you label yourself an entrepreneur, a free thinker, a open-minded, you're going to be so many different things, right? You're opening up your own doors versus closing your doors, labeling yourself as, oh, I'm a teacher, or I'm a, you're so many different things. You could be a dad, you could be a brother, you could be, you are not what you do, right?
Yeah, right. And that is something that once we put, like, I call that mental occupation.
Yep.
Which is where you put a specific thought into play, and then that thought gains traction and becomes something that you think about versus you thought it. And then from there, it starts finding its roots into creating something that has to do with your character. And it becomes part of your character declaration, the way that you behave. Before you know it, it becomes who you are. That mentally occupying something. Children do it all the time by playing pretend, or at least they should be playing pretend, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then as they're playing that, they're feeling it out. Like the things that I was, the characters that I lived as a child was incredible. From a dinosaur to a scientist to you name it, right? You go back far enough, it's like, I want to be a firefighter. And then later that day, I'm a dinosaur, right? And I lived into it with a lot of passion. I played, and as I got older, I started to listen to a little bit more of the rules, which are necessary to grow into adulthood. But some people take those rules a little too serious. And then they don't think outside of what they feel they've been assigned to. It's like the concept of living in where the government tells you your job and you can't do anything other than that job. It reduces your autonomy and your abilities to think. And with that, we get to, like what you said, you lived inside of the idea of Josh is trainer. Well, Josh is now converting that into entrepreneur who trains people.
Yes. I like to say, I have it on a whiteboard. Anyone listening, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, you're interested in being more of a free thinker, buy a whiteboard and just write your thoughts down. So I have it on my whiteboard right now. It says, set your agenda from within. So if you always gauge on what you're doing based on, like we talked about this whole thing, right, how you feel, then your exterior world is going to be so different, so different.
Yeah. Those nooks and crannies, you start realizing where your world is.
Yes.
Right. And that you truly are a creator.
Exactly.
Or you're living a life somebody else created for you.
Yes. Which that's a big one too, because we, again, always be, and this is another good point. Whenever you share your newly revelations, I call them revelations, with other people, be careful who you share them to, because some people are stuck in that mindset too, and they'll shoot your ideas quicker down. It's crazy how sometimes the closest people to you are actually the people who hold you back the most, you know, whether it be parents, brothers, sisters, and yeah, it's wild.
Yep. And to speak on that for a second too, it's this like, it's either ants or crabs in a bucket, right? Like crabs pull each other back down, ants will help each other out. You know, so if you leave them in a bucket overnight, ants will get out of a bucket. They'll link together and work their way out. But crabs, they'll be right there. Maybe one or two will get out, but they didn't get out easily. But the rest of them, they're not getting out. All right. So you can depend on the bucket being full of crabs.
Yeah.
And that's what people do. But one of the reasons that I've realized that people do that is that as soon as you make a break for freedom, that's going to be cognitively expensive for them because they're familiar with the patterns that they become accustomed by your behavior. And that has their idea of what they can trust you for and what they can't trust you for. So trust being the predictability of a behavior or an outcome. All right. So with that, if Josh changes the way that he behaves, he may be more unpredictable for me and not necessarily somebody that I could invest something in and expect a return, the ROI on the relationship. So from there, it also has me look on the times that I've given up on myself. The more successful I see you, it's this opposite of Schadenfreude. You know, like Schadenfreude, you know, not wanting to see somebody else go through hardship, but yet finding satisfaction in it. The other is when you make a break for freedom, you become successful. I have to face my failure. And because I had to face that failure, it's uncomfortable. And I realized that I wasn't good enough at that time. And by giving up, proved that I wasn't good enough. Yeah. But you wouldn't listen to that and you exceeded in it, or you just have a preset amount of skills that help your perseverance become more tangibly successful. So yeah, that's what I see whenever it comes to why people don't like to see you change, especially the ones that are closest to you.
Yes.
They know you for your mistakes. They know you for the successes that you've had, but they've also become accustomed to who you are and how they can depend on you. Yes. And if you change that, they feel like it's a sensation of their trust has been betrayed. But who in the right mind would tell you that you betrayed their trust because you're successful, right? It's like this deeper subconscious sensation of trust.
Yes. Yes. I see what you mean. It's, it's interesting. You know, you would think that, again, make sure you surround yourself with people that are around you that maybe don't necessarily want to hold you back, but they want to help you be more like ants, right? In your example, ants. So it's, yeah, it's wild. I have a hard time wrapping my head around how we should be helping each other more, which is another reason why I was so glad you were doing this, is because maybe through these podcasts, it will help people kind of think that way. So instead of dragging people down, they can maybe pick people back up. And you got to be careful. This is something that I'm working on with myself very, very much, is because not everyone is going to be on the same motivational level to change, right? The best and worst thing about life is that things change. And not everyone's going to be on the best side, right? Most people don't like change. So you have to gauge people and understand, okay, just like with a client, right? If your old example of, okay, what are your energy levels today on a 1 to 10 scale? And sometimes you have to know what kind of mental level people are on, and that if you're a 2 and I'm bringing a 10, I'm not going to get anywhere, you know?
Right. You could easily turn me off because you're too far away from me.
Yeah.
And there are obviously mirroring techniques, but how many people truly are trying to mirror somebody else?
Sure.
And it's like they say, if you're the smartest person in the room, find another room. You know, it's not to abandon where you've come from, but know that where you've come from can be shackles for your future. Absolutely. If it continues to hold you back. And there are plenty of people that fall into that category. That's why a lot of people leave their hometown. Now, they'll leave their hometown because people there know them for who they were at some of their best and their worst. And now it's seeing you outside of that's a little challenging, or very challenging.
What percentage of people do you think leave their hometown, if you had to guess?
I couldn't guess that, actually. I would say if I were to throw a guess out there, I'd probably say about 40%, maybe less.
Yeah.
But we could Google it.
Yeah. Oh, it won't let me. Yeah,
Never. I was gonna back off and do a quick little Google search on it, but yeah, my Zoom is you just told me it blocked
yeah,
me on it.
I'm sure it would be less people leave is what I would guess, right? I would sure less people leave their hometown. Again, just back to the whole basis of most people don't like change, right? Change means, like you said, that they relate it to as bad. And I would say, going back to our original topic of positive thinking, what ifs go both ways, right? So most people say, oh, what if I fail? What if they say no? What if this doesn't work out? But you could switch your mind up and say, what if it does work out? What if it doesn't fail? Well, if it does fail, maybe I just learned a lesson. I can try again. So it's all mindset, right? Mindset is the biggest thing when it comes to change, change, adapting to people around you, sometimes it'd be beneficial to help people grow instead of pushing them away if you can, but it all gauges on who you surround yourself with.
Absolutely. It makes me think of one of the concepts in psychology called scaffolding.
Okay.
And they use it a lot in clinical psychology, where you build up around the person to help them become successful in a specific thinking model, or adding a particular bridge for a behavior change. So you build that person up with your ability to actually make that successful. And then slowly, as you encourage them to take over for themselves so that they become independent in that way of thinking and or that behavior, that becomes successful for other parts of their life. And you remove yourself slowly as you make it so that they are truly successful long term. That is something that I was working on with a project that I have. It's just the maturity program that I have, but it's building up in that scaffolding factor. It's like, you know what, Josh is going to have, like, he's proficient in 7 out of the 10 areas, and there's 3 areas that he has differing values of his ability to produce. Now, with that, what is it that I can contribute to those areas to help him be more successful? But buy-in, just like in training, buy-in is really important. Declaration, like, Josh, I'm going to make some changes in my life. This is where I'm going. I know it's not going to be the easiest thing. And I know that I'm going to face some things that I don't know about. I also know I'm going to face some things that I do know about. So with that, as I go through these changes, I do ask that if you can help, please do. But if you can't, please don't.
Yes.
Because I'm going through these changes. Now, if you don't make that declaration, they just treat you as if you've done something sneaky at times. It's like you're being sneaky by trying to develop yourself.
Yes. I know. It's a strange concept.
It is, but at the same time, for me, I find that the more we understand where the other person or where other people are, the more likely we are to at least be more successful and carry less of the negative over. Because if I have, 5 years ago, I had a bad experience with somebody and I have to interact with them regularly, like family members, stuff like that, it changes who I am in their presence.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't change me in the way that I behave or even the way that I think initially or long-term, I still have to manage myself and cost myself thinking resources for time while I'm adjusting myself so that I don't act out beyond my desired behavior. Right. So I have to go into that moment going, all right, now it's time for management. I can't say this, but I feel like I want to, right? I can't smite that person, or I can't just, ignore them, because that's not who I am, but I have to manage me in that time. So coming in, any other thoughts are blocked while I'm doing my self-management to deal with that situation, versus let's work on getting it complete right now. So if there's something that's hanging us up, address it. Even if it's like, look, I want to address something, but I don't necessarily expect that we're going to come out of it with a direct conclusion, other than we just know each other a little bit better. But we may not necessarily satisfy a conclusion with this thing that we want. So with that, this is what I'm up to. And then for a fact, if you can trust for resources from them when you need it, right? I may need just advice. I may need you to be a venting location for me. I may need you to just say, Chad, you've done that wood carving thing this way. I was thinking about it. Maybe if you try that way. And then I try it, and all of a sudden I see greater success. Right? I want to keep that avenue of conversation open instead of shutting it down by not telling you that I'm up to something.
Yep. Going back to the old saying, right? It takes 2 to tango. So you got to make sure that those people are on, whoever you're dealing with is on the same page as you. And that's why communication is, and we don't really, I feel like as time goes on, communication is becoming less and less and less. Most, like now, the hot craze in fitness training is online training. So it's Everyone's doing it. But the reason why I like the train is because I like the communication. So I feel like with technology, it's both our burden, right? It sucks in some ways because of how it eliminates our communication. But in some ways, like right now is a great example. We're on Zoom, right? Zoom, it can then heighten communication. So it's all making sure people use the resources we have at hand for the proper reasons, right? So communication's key, and it takes work. Today we went to the grocery store this morning. I said out loud to Danielle, I took some communication courses in college, but I would love to find another communications course. It was just the course, just to take and to learn, to help better understand how I can relate to others more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with that, what a fantastic and essential skill. Most people believe they're communicating when they're talking at somebody.
Nope.
I said what I had to say. He's like, well, what did they say? And then you can hear them piece things together, right? At best, or they'll direct it away. Like you said, it's like we have so many different ways of interacting with people. For me, I love the potent self. I love being as potent as I can. And the way of being the most potent is to be the most congruent with who you truly are.
Yep.
Because you're communicating at your deepest honesty.
Yep.
With your congruency with yourself, which is a core value thing. And it's like, how do you understand that? You have to do the work. If you think you're going to accidentally find it, usually those accidents come by way of trauma, not by something of your own desirable experience, right? Like who wants to go through life trauma to finally take stock of their life?
Yes.
Right? It's like it takes that to wake them up. You don't have to get to that. That's to me, that's just a fascinating position.
The old saying, it's only when you have lost everything you are free to do anything. Because
Yes.
all the things that you thought actually controlled who you are, you're open to learning who you are, and then from then on out, that's why rock bottom, like there's another, I love quotes, so I'll rattle off something. There's another great quote by Hunter S. Thompson, the writer, right? The edge is only truly known by someone who has already gone over it. So once you have gone over the edge and you can see kind of the spectrums of life and how, like if you've been depressed or anxiety or bad point also in your life, in the moment, it's not going to be fun. But if you can learn to get through that, then your mental, your cognitive understanding of how people work and how people are going to be different. Like, again, Elon Musk said that every day we wake up, we are different than the day before. We think that we go to sleep and we wake up and we're exactly the same. But we're constantly changing. So if people don't constantly change their mindsets as well, and like you said, it takes work. It's hard. Like it's being and growing. It's not a fun process, but joy truly comes from building through and becoming more of who you really are inside,
Oh yeah. It's Elon really resonates well. It's a good person to use.
Yes.
Like who the hell knew anything about Elon before he became but we know him now, right? Mm-hmm. Just before SpaceX, right? He was known as Tesla.
Yep. Yep.
No one cared. Well, not to say no one cared. Few people cared for who he was or even knew that he existed prior. Now, you can understand by his behavior on an interpersonal, and just like if you walk into the relation or the opportunity just looking for a friendship, you may be like, that dude's a little bit out there for me, because he doesn't show a lot of empathic interaction. He doesn't come across that way. He comes across as being like he might be on the spectrum of it. There's nothing's wrong with that. It just, he doesn't express himself the way that we become accustomed or expect people to typically express themselves. He's a little eccentric.
Yes.
But then when you listen to him, you can see that he has what we would call a true north. Like it's not the north that we think it is, it's his true north. And that's only going to be known if you understand him. If you've asked him specifically, what do you want to accomplish? Jeff Bezos' true north. Amazon.
Yeah.
Make things flow like the river.
Yep.
Right? That's a true north. And having that associated understanding, some of us are still finding it because we're unraveling the life we were told we should live versus the life that you can live.
Yeah.
So it's like you can make it or somebody else will give it to you. But what they give to you usually is not going to be the most joyful.
Yep.
Sometimes work is necessary for appreciation. But the other side of it is having complete control over your life, or most of your life is under control. You have to work for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. I mean, control, like, so probably the number one thing that keeps people from achieving what they want is fear, right? We're
Mhm.
all driven by fear. Fear is what stops us from anything, right? And again, because fear comes internal, right? It's your
Mhm.
brain knows you better than anyone does, right? Your brain knows what you're scared of. It knows what, like, just daily thoughts, like, the thoughts run through your brain all day long, and being able to organize those thoughts and understand, that's probably why these guys are successful like they are. Is I think Elon Musk said he uses 5% of his brain for this, 5% for that. Like, they organize their thoughts very well. They control their emotions, and people, we're very emotional creatures, right? We thrive off of emotion. So the better we can know ourselves, the better we can control our emotions, the more
Yeah.
productive we'll be in every aspect in life.
You know, something that also comes to mind is a conversation I had with a friend of mine yesterday. It's very similar to you. Actually, you know the gentleman. His name's Johnny.
Okay.
Um, yeah, we were talking about it, and they're like, it's people like to dismiss or disembody. They dismember, actually, is a better way of putting it. Specific emotional values. Like they'll dismember negative when they're focused on the positive. All right, so it's a negative thought. Let me cut that out. Let me like take it off completely. I alienate it from me. Um, but spite has value. Frustration has value. Now, um, like even the idea of a grudge has value. A lot of that has value for introspection and understand who you are as a whole. But frustration is a fuel. Spite is a fuel. They're limited though. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like if you want to see long-term success, you have to understand how to transition these resources. So if you're spiteful, then you feel like you've been slighted. You're not going to be spiteful against somebody you don't feel has slighted you. All right. So if somebody has slighted you or somebody has made some sort of offense to you, what does that do to you? And how much space do you give it? The longer you think about it, it grows. And the more that it grows, it just like the mental occupation example earlier, you're mentally occupying your character in spite.
Yep.
And it's not a negative necessarily as a whole. Like, yeah, it's undesirable, but at the same time, when you're in spite of somebody, whew, it feels good, right?
Yep.
Because you feel like you're going to be able to get your pound of flesh,
Yep.
right? It's biblical in a sense, the pound of flesh.
Yep.
No, but the reason why it's like that is because it's a human nature piece. And to sterilize our life and to say that we always have to be the positive isn't, it's an injustice at times because the negative brings a value as well. Now you do want to align the long-term thinking processes to something that's going to make you pleasant to be around when you're successful, because there's plenty of people that are successful that they have done it out of spite, and they're usually not that pleasant to be around because they've become so occupied by the idea of resentment that they've become living embodiment of resentment, which would be what, right? Like you're a servant to me now because I own enough that you should want what I have.
Yep.
Even if it's a small fraction of it, hold the door open, smile when I walk by. I'll ridicule you if you don't. That's the living embodiment of what happens if you let that become your character.
Yep.
But if it's in the earlier stages, don't lose the understanding that that's created something in you, but don't let it become how you've made yourself successul.
Yep.
Now, that's again long-winded, but it's
Well,
airing some of those thoughts as they've become
yep.
present.
The things you own end up owning you if you're not careful. It's a great way another good way to say it, right? It's
Yeah.
if you get too consumed on the things that are spite or just emotions, right? If you don't know what's a lesson and what's a proper motivation or a bad motivation, like if you don't have, for example, right? Let's say we have a Ferrari. If my fuel is spite, then I'm putting unleaded, cheap, regular gas in a Ferrari, right? So fill it, right? Know the value of what certain motivators bring to the table, but also again know that certain things, like you said, right, they'll burn out. That fuel won't last forever, and you'll go back to the original starting point of, okay, why am I here? What was my original motivation for this? I may be frustrated in the moment, but how can I use that frustration to project me back onto my original path that I was on?
Yeah, it's taking stock of yourself. You're auditing your behavior in such a way that you can recognize your attachment. Doesn't mean that what you're using is wrong necessarily. It just may not be the most successful for you. And the way to gauge that is to find out if you may have taken a path that doesn't lead to success. Now, but it could lead to destination, but it may take you around the world before you finally get there. And all you needed to do is get down the street to the local Publix, right?
Yep. Yep.
Like I got lost. I got lost in these other things in life because they don't have that clarity. It really is a huge benefit to understand what you want to create. And then use, like you said, the laws of attraction. The laws of attraction have a lot of psychology built in them. Now, if you go around thinking that you're sneaky enough that you can tell people, I really like you, but you don't have the congruency of thought to go with the statement, you will be found out because you're going to come across as being insincere, shallow, or borderline sociopathic or psychotic. There's going to be challenges that'll become your own demise if that's how you create your world. But also, you get there again, you can be that horrendous person nobody wants to be around, and you find that you have to pay people to be around you. Who wants to have that as their archetype of success? But a lot of people do, though. All right, think of Rosebud. You've seen the movie Citizen Kane?
I have not. No.
Joshua, yes, you got to watch Citizen Kane. Yes. So the premise of that movie, you know what? I'm not going to spoil it for you, but for the people that are watching, just know that it is like I'm talking about the character in Citizen Kane. I'm coming to the conclusion now in my own, I'm like, yeah, that's him. But they made that movie, and it was such an amazing and popular movie. It's gone down in in history as being one of the best movies ever because it has so much depth and richness to it. And it turned his dying words is Rosebud, and you spend the movie figuring out what the hell that means. But he's this ultra wealthy man, and the very first scene is his death, and then it goes into his life, and then you find out throughout the movie, if you're paying attention, you'll realize what Rosebud is and why he built the life that he did. And it's fascinating because it is cerebral, right? It's very heady, or it's stimulating, but you have to pay attention to it.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a flashy movie. It's a very well-written, deep movie. It's older. I forgot what year it was made, but it's definitely, I think it's in black and white. Great movie though.
Okay, I'll check it out.
One to watch, my man. You'll appreciate
I'll check it out.
But yeah, then there's the other side, right? It's like, look at the people that we see that are highly successful. Some of them had to stand against the mainstream. Jordan Peterson is, in my opinion, a very successful man. Second time mentioning him on this particular episode, but he's had to stand against the mainstream, and he had to stand for what he thought was right and integrity. And he was labeled as a villain by some people for it. But he had to stand for something. And that's another part of it. Like knowing where you want to go, you have to stand for that. Yeah. And sometimes you realize, like going to the bar on Friday night, when you've got the book you told yourself you would read waiting on your table, and you go to the bar instead, you're not standing for yourself. You're probably also not allocating enough playtime. Because we shouldn't be 100% work, right? We do that. Yeah, you probably will sour a little bit. But you do that. The creative life means you plan it.
Exactly. So for me, it was my faith. So at the beginning of the show, you asked, right? You said that, or before we got on here, you asked me, what did I want to go by? Okay. So pre-COVID, I like to refer myself as Josh. So that was that character, right? The kind of, the intrinsic, self-loathing, just negative, just thought about all the things that were wrong in my life and all the people who were holding me back. And post-COVID, I like to go by Joshua because of my newly found Christianity. Before, I went to church, but I didn't feel it. It was just kind of going through the motions. And once I started to dive into it more, so it's funny. So in the Bible, it talks about how sometimes God will send you ravens. Okay, now ravens are nasty birds. They're not pretty, but sometimes the ugliest things in your life will actually show you the prettiest things in your life. So I'll share. It's kind of strange, but I got obsessed with the idea of joy, right? Because once I lost my job, like we talked, it's what I identified. I identified myself as my job. So I needed to find out what true joy was. So knowing what you stand for and what your ideals are is it'll help you venture down the correct path more. It'll guide you along. And sometimes for me, I knew that I wasn't enough. I knew that I needed more internal help figuring out who I was. So I feel like, again, there's so many different religions in the world. There's Muslim, there's so many different, and they all had the same message. It was all about knowing myself, right? Loving one another around us. I don't care if it's Buddhism, they all have the same message. If we can dive into love and being there for one another more, I feel like our world would be a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that relates. Sometimes I like to go, yeah.
Yeah, no, it does, Joshua. It absolutely relates because it is like, it's back into that thinking process. So, for me, it's, and like I mentioned to you, there was it was the troubleshooting stage of the episode before we went live or before we started recording. And me sharing where I stand on the religious position, right? Like I was raised Baptist, as Christian. And I came across some information, like talking about Greek mythology and other religions and, other things that fall into mythology, and they call mythology the graveyard of religions. It's the ancestors for the ones that are current or the dead religions. And it started to really shake me on the superficial side, or the superstitious side of what religion, right? And so I was looking at it from a very literal sense. And I went into and became atheist. I am probably the smallest minority in the world when it comes to religious positioning, because I am still atheist because of the supernatural elements. But I highly support people looking and finding a religion for what you're talking about, which is the values that come with it, right? Like you hear the lessons, you see a community that cares, they inspire people to care for other people, versus the position of like with what a lot of atheists do, which they resent because a lot of them think that they were brought up to be mind controlled. And in a sense, those parameters that those good elements about religions bring are a controlling mechanism to stop them from doing the things that may not necessarily help them in their long-term future, but they don't see it that way. They see suppression, and then they become spiteful and or aggressive against people that are religious when that message comes back up. I've been abused and manipulated before. I don't see it that way. Like I did for a short period of time, but I don't see it that way now. I see the joy, like with you, when you mentioned religion, you lit up. Right? Like it's like there's a spark, and they call that the spark of divinity, right? That showed up on you. Like your energy was just massive, right? That moment, it's like you were alive, right? And you feel that sense of there's purpose involved in it. You feel a place of belonging. You feel a community, a unity. You feel people that care that you're successful. They're not crabs in the bucket. More often in those scenarios, you find the ants in a bucket. They will come together to help you become successful. Not every single person that walks through the door is just washed in this type of innocence and this type of purity, but you're more likely to come across it. And that's something that people that move away from religion start to lose. They still want sense of purpose. They still want belonging, but they don't have that type of organization where people are vested in their success. It's like everybody's just like young entrepreneurs, right? Young entrepreneurs, the most common fault for young entrepreneurs, they try to do everything themselves. And some of them are very open-minded, and trait open-mindedness or trait openness in the big five is very common to find for entrepreneurs. They're free thinkers or they're innovative thinkers, but typically they don't follow through well because that's for trait conscientiousness, which is more conservative thinking, which is structure oriented. They make amazing managers. They don't typically come up with a lot of great ideas though, or like big revolutionary ideas. That's the open-minded people or the thinkers, or open-minded thinkers. They're all thinkers. That's another thing that I really hope that I dispel in time, is where people are like, oh, they're closed-minded. They don't think, or free thinkers. They're thinking. They're just thinking through parameters that the person, that open-minded person, doesn't see that the other person, because they're not open-minded enough to realize the thinking processes that person's going through. So it's fascinating when you get into that, because it's like it's disputing teams that they're doing the same thing, but it's different ways of seeing it, but they're doing the same thing. So when it comes to that, it's like I mentioned, I'm like one of the smallest and most, like one of the smallest minorities in that, is because I'll be attacked for that. If I go out and like just say that openly on my social medias, where I'm just like, yeah, I'm an atheist that promotes Christianity. It's like, and it's not just Christianity. It's like, if you get into the really moderate versions of Islam or Hinduism, hell, even more of the dead ones like Ayurvedics and things like that, there's some people that will still practice some of these things. Druids, it's like you'll find some of those people. The essence that every one of them share is the part of what you're mentioning, which is the community factor, the working through life's challenges, you're not alone, and the betterness of life and the betterment for the people that are associated with that thinking process. Why would you want to invest in somebody that has your thinking process? Because they're more likely to be a supporter. That's why you get religious groupings where they become very supportive of each other. Oh, by the way, we didn't mention Judaism, which is another very popular, common one. But yeah, it's like, but that's also why people will resent some of those populations. They're willing to help each other, but not me, because I'm not that religion. But if you were to think that way, think for a second also, if they helped you take their resources and put it out for you, are you willing to do that for them? And their history has shown them that the people that are associated with their beliefs also are more likely to help them in the future. So it's an investment in their own future. That's why the motive would be there more than it is, oh, we just hate everybody that doesn't believe our way, which is another fault that atheists seem to have commonly, is that they hate people that don't think their way. I haven't had that experience with a lot of religious people, not in my adult life.
Have you been keeping up with, I love how like we're growing in a sense of understanding religion a little bit better. Like if you talk to 80-year-olds right now about Christianity, and you talk to, let's say, 29-year-olds about Christianity, our views are very different, right? Very interpretation. We're starting to grow in our interpretation of, what the Bible says and how to relate it to your life. And God does want you to be happy. And it's crazy how, I can't wait for it to continue to grow so that maybe more people, I know my job is to get people to be more Christianity, but just to seek out other divine and think about, like, why are you here? Like, did you just appear? Like, all of a sudden you just showed up here and then it just ends? Like, to think of, to give yourself more purpose in life, right? I think that's kind of what religion does, is it gives you a purpose. It gives you something to work towards. It gives you reasoning, but why you're working at it, it's a beautiful thing. And I can't wait to see it grow more, and hopefully more people in any religion, right? I mean, whether it be Buddhism is great, right? Buddha never claimed to be God. He didn't say he was God. He was just a teacher. It's anything, any positive learning you can do in your life, it's super beneficial. There's no wrong way. So all those Bible bumpers that tell you, oh, think this way, no, it's a mindset,
Well, you could also look at it like sales, right?
Yep.
Like some people that do sales, like in our industry, you'll have people that talk to you because you have a BMI, and I prefer to say body fat than body mass index, but they'll have their body fat high enough that it's in the high risk category, right? For diabetes, heart disease, stroke, cancer, that kind of things. It increases their likelihood, right? There are people in this industry, or in that industry particularly, that will leverage a fear motivator. Well, that's also what some people experience when it comes to the sales of religion, which to get people in, which is the fire and brimstone. If you don't do this, you're going to be punished and all of that. That may be the motivator that has worked for them to be part of it. But there's a beautiful loving side that's dismissed. That's the sweet part. Eat your vegetables, which is a fire and brimstone, but you can have your ice cream afterwards, which is eternal bliss, right? Like that kind of mentality. And I think that does a huge disservice. It may work for some, but for the people that doesn't work for, it turns them off and further embeds them into avoiding it, which is what is better, right? You're going to a school, a belief system that can help you become more satisfied with your life. You can honor who you are, or you can honor something greater than you. And if you honor who you are, good, you're probably not doing a lot of self-destructive behaviors. But if you honor something that's higher or bigger than you, then you're more likely to do something that doesn't just benefit you and your well-being, but the people around you and their well-being. That is the more desirable and beautiful side of what I think is lost whenever people are in these desperation sales tactics or these desperation recruitment tactics. Like you said, it's growing, and it is. Of the three religions or monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, I'd say that with the three, Judaism be the oldest of the three. Christianity is the second oldest, but Christianity's also brought a whole hell of a lot of civility. Judaism has brought also a lot of civility. You can say Islam has brought on its moderate side more civility for the regions that it's in, but it is a little younger. So it still has some of the growing pains that it's going through. And that's why you also see so many different sects that are warring factions with each other. You still see that with Christianity too, like in Ireland, you have the Protestants versus the Catholics. It's pretty bloody stuff that's going on in Ireland. But that's, again, the people that are on the boat of righteousness. And you don't come across as having that desire for righteousness. You come across as the desire of unity, right? It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. You see a brother in that other person or a sister in that person. And that's a loving, true, that to me is that spark of divinity. I went off on a little bit more of a tirade again, but
no, I love it. Because honestly, like theology, it's so intriguing. It's so intriguing that and the best thing I think that Christianity's been going through now is we're having this boom of non-denomination. I think non-denomination is the best thing that's ever happened to Christianity, right? Because churches you got to be careful with, and anything run by people you have to be careful with, because like you said, they will use there's a good method to do things, and there's a bad method to do things. And people Christianity has cost a lot of lives over the years, right? The Crusades, it still is to this day, right? It still is to this day. There's some countries, a couple weeks ago, no, it was probably a few months ago, we went to North Carolina. We flew there, and in the airport, I was reading my Bible just because it's what I like to do, right? So, but there's countries that if I did that I could be shot on sight. Like they would kill me right then if I was doing that in public, or attack me. There would be big consequences to my actions, right? So it's growing, and I'm excited to see where things go. It's fun. I don't know how to kind of piece it together, but the non-denomination is a great thing, Yeah.
You know what I love about it, Joshua, is that as you're talking, this intended episode is about positive thinking and the laws of attraction. What better place can you get positive thinking, the laws of attraction, than with a group of people that share your position? You've heard of Simon Sinek.
Yes, love him. He's one of my favorite. Yeah.
Did you hear him talk about his sociological experiment, where he said, like, okay, you can be in your hometown and you're around somebody that also is from that hometown, but you don't know them. You really don't want to interact with them, right? You're not motivated to interact with them. You're just up to your own business. But you can be in a state and find out somebody else that's in that state, and not necessarily a different state, right? And that person you find out is from your own hometown. You never met, but you're from their own town, and there's a commonality. Why is it that when you're in your hometown, that person is less meaningful or desirable to meet, but once you go into a state out of your hometown and you find out you're both from that place, now you can go even further and you go into, okay, well, now you're from the United States and you're in Europe and you're on a train and you find out somebody else is on the train that's from the United States. You're more likely to want to talk to that person than you were if they were from your hometown and you're in your hometown.
That's interesting. I've always, because like growing up in Georgia, whenever I'm in Georgia, or whenever, like Danielle, my girlfriend, always wants to go to Atlanta, and I've been in Atlanta for so many times. So when I'm in Atlanta, I'm like, it's just Atlanta. When I'm around here and people ask me where I'm from Atlanta. Where I'm from, you get excited to kind of pitch where you are. Yeah, I've never thought about that. It's true.
Simon Sinek talks about it, and he's like, you could be somewhere else. And I don't know if that was a TED talk or not. Like an early TED talk. I don't care to watch them anymore, but the old ones back in 12, 13, 12, and 14. But yeah, he was talking about that. I'm like, you know what? It's absolutely true though. You could be on a train in your hometown, and somebody else in that hometown from your hometown, you're not likely to talk to them unless you have a reason to, like you bump into each other, or you need to ask for the seat or something. but now you go to another state and you find out you're from that. And you almost feel like it has some sort of divine intervention that the two of you, by this concept of chance, are sitting in the same seat or on the same train car or interacting in a way. Like you see, they're wearing a hat from your hometown and you just see them and you make a conversation with that person because you're in Germany. And you're like, you from Georgia? Like, yeah. Why do you ask? Wearing a hat. Oh yeah, that's my hometown. Really? I come from there too. That's my hometown. How long, did you stay there and you start this conversation, right? But you can be on a train or the bus in your hometown, see that hat and not think anything of it. You completely dismiss it unless you have a reason to talk to them.
Do you think it's because that we get so used to our normality that we crave change? And then as soon as we actually have the change, we have to drop back to our more normal setting, that we have to kind of relate to that more. So it's almost like we crave this this desire for constant, manipulation of our surroundings. And as soon as that happens, we crave what we used to have. It's crazy.
Well, I think that actually has a lot. It's multifaceted, the motivation behind that realization. Absolute, like change, some of it is, it reminds us of something. Familiarity, I would say, would be a bigger part too, which is just knowing that somebody else is familiar and immediately you feel like you have somebody that might actually be a representative of your own tribe and your tribe be your hometown. And that's, you see all these rivalries that happen in sports games and things like that because everybody's rooting for the best team, right? Whenever it's their team, it's the best team. And then you get the rivalries that take place. Well, this scenario is you don't really necessarily have somebody there that is not, a hostile involvement. So you're not going to be trying to bond with somebody else out of hostility because somebody else is hostile around you. Now, if you were to up the ante and create a hostile situation and the two of you are involved in it, but you're involved as innocent bystanders, then you may have a bonding element that lasts beyond that moment, beyond just the mention. You may want to stay in touch with each other. You've had a traumatic exposure and you can both bring that relationship together in such a way that that you both survived that moment and you went through something you can both agree you went through. More so than we sat on a bus and looked out the window,
Yeah.
But I think it's multifaceted. And that's why it's sometimes hard to pin down, something that makes it beyond just what some people experience as a phenomena. Now, there's something behind it because there's a psychology behind it. There's a sociology of it. Now, but yeah, change, you get something different. You're in a different environment in this scenario. If you're in like Germany, you don't have to be. That's just the one that they just popped at the top of mind. And perhaps it's because I've been to Germany and my experience there, I did come across somebody on a train car. Actually, no, it was Holland. And there was somebody from Colorado. And we just immediately clicked until we talked about water purity. And then there was something she was more passionate about and I was passionate about my position on artesian water sources. And she was about the municipality producing water treatment plants and things like that. And like we had this and before you know it, we're both looking out the window opposite of each other. But we were drawn together immediately off that commonality, which is we're both in the United States.
That's probably a great example of the law of attraction, right? How it brings you together in ways, or you may meet the law of attraction is it's interesting. So the more you think about something, right? Let's say, for example, I've been obsessed with stocks lately, Chad. I've just been the stock market. I've been studying, I've been reading books, I've been doing TD Ameritrade's free courses they have. And the more I've learned, I'm starting to find all these people around me that have that interest as well, but I wasn't looking for it before. So it's cool. I think that's a good example of how the law of attraction works, but maybe we don't always think of it as the law of attraction. I think some people have this idea, the law of attraction is I think, so all of a sudden I'm going to have, whatever I'm thinking instantly. It may take some time, but again, also being aware of what you want, it's going to stem you and take you on, like we said, the Amazon River, right, to kind of where you want to get. So it's interesting how it works,
Yeah. And I'll add another piece too. It's for the people that don't like the esoteric concept of the laws of attraction, you can look at the portions of the brain like the reticular activator, which is one that, let's say Josh wants a red Corvette, right? Just car out of Joshua wants a red Corvette, right?
Recently it's been Tesla.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, you may not notice as many of them when you're coveting the idea, right? You're like, I want that car. And when you see it, it's like a treat. Like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the experience of actually when you get it, then you see the car everywhere. And
Yes.
it loses some sort of special value because you wanted it and it's kind of rare by comparison to other makes.
Yeah.
And then you got it, and now you're like, oh, there's another one. And like, oh, and you can see that commonality where you're like, I know what they're experiencing because I have one. Teslas are a badass car.
Oh, they're so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll have its challenges, but it's still a young company compared to other companies that have been around for 100 years, or more, right? But it's still such an amazing vehicle. It is a technology company that makes a car.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Not a car company that makes a technology car. It's a technology company that makes a car.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
they think. As you drive them, they think, and they learn your patterns. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, the car is thinking, you know?
yes. But you'll know that the other person's experiencing that when you see it.
Yes.
So you drive by and you're like, there's a red one. Well, there's another blue one, but I got the better color. It's red.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, it's just they put so much thought into the vehicle, but you understand what they're experiencing. So it's just that kind of stuff is like, so your brain is receiving that because you've opened up, there's the thought, and then you see the possibility of the thought, and it starts opening your perspectives further. And before you know it, you start seeing what was always there. You just didn't notice it because the blinders were stopping you from seeing it. So behavior change, things like that, to become successful, we have to uproot those ideas in such a way that we can progress successfully. So I know, again, I get long-winded on these because, these, when I do this type of, when I go on those kind of rants, if you will, that's also fleshing out the thought.
Yes.
Because it's like, you may know these things, but you may have never said it. And you almost sit witness an entertainment value, if you will, as you go through the thought. And it's like, you have to finish it to make it a reality. Otherwise it continues to bounce around right through the synapse.
Like, so do you have a whiteboard that you keep around? Do you have a whiteboard you write things down, or a notebook, or, okay. It's important, you know?
I've got stuff all over the damn place. As far as like, projections and things like that, what I'm wanting to accomplish, because again, like that, compartmentalizing your thinking in a way that you better organize it and then start fitting them together almost like Lego pieces or puzzle pieces. And it's like, it's the same as reading a book. Reading cover to cover now, with as many books that are available in our attention spans, most people don't have the discipline to go cover to cover. Some people will force themselves to go from cover to cover, and because they found a point that's not as applicable in their life or doesn't satisfy the level of interest they have at that moment, they then become kind of, they're reading for the purpose of reading versus reading for the purpose of learning.
Yes.
And then they're like, I'm just going to power through it.
Yep.
And they miss the next few chapters or the rest of the book. They got more of what they wanted, or they didn't have time to flesh out the idea. So I use my whole house as kind of an example of that. It's not a hoarding thing, nothing like that. I actually prefer to keep things as organized as possible and neat. But there are segments, like my home projects are similar. I wanted to have a more modern shower. My shower now does not look like it belongs in the house. It's absolutely fantastic. And I'm not bragging at the sense that like I did a great job. It's still like every time I take a shower, and it's been functioning and back up for more than 3 months now. And I'm like, every time I take a shower, I'm like, God, I love this thing. And I did the whole thing, right? It's like, and it's not like I didn't have somebody come in and do it. I did it top to bottom. The whole thing was me. So it's like creating the life you want that way. Now it's like, build it.
I have a thought. Now that made me think of something. So that's kind of what we do in our lives too, right? Like maybe there's a certain aspect of your life that you built up on this pedestal that you're super proud of, right? For you, you just set it as a shower or a bathroom, but maybe there's certain areas in your life that you've built up that maybe you're going to build up other things as well. It's kind of, you know what I'm trying to say? Like it's like you're projecting your, like out into your surroundings, your exterior, like certain values that you hold, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's like strong suits.
Yes.
Right. Like you'll become extremely proficient in some area of your life. And other areas will experience neglect as you're becoming proficient in that area. But the thing is, most people will develop that area of a strength, and they will neglect the other parts of their life and hide it behind the strength. Now, I'm extremely educated. I'm very smart. And then they look at, well, okay, that's it. They lead into conversations that way. That's the first thing they want you to know about them. That's the thing that they keep trying to position the conversation around. And they don't really build out from that, and they become, inept in other areas because of how advanced they are in one, but the other areas are incapable of being sustainable or functional, and they have to try to outsmart something that it just took perseverance on, or outsmart something that, took, the exercise in the gym. It's fascinating how we do those things. You're referring to the other side of it, whereas like you have like the great shower, right? And then you build out from that, but that's something that you skill setted yourself with that you will use later in life as the house of your life comes together.
Yes.
So, hiding behind the strength, you're
Kind of
building, put it
like
together.
our example of like what we do, right? So, okay, if someone can learn how to, eat healthy, how to exercise, how to better their body, that's probably going to stem into something else in their life, right? The recipe for success is the same across the board. It's just we have to apply it to different things, right?
Absolutely. You have to be adaptive, right? But again, it's the formula is the same. It's just the variables can be different, but the formula is still the same. It's just the way the formula works. And it's something that we're all like growing through. Hell, I'm 40. I'll be 41 next month. And
Okay.
it's still a process of learning and growing through that. So it's the idea of perfection is an infection. It's something that somebody else has given you to make you to motivate you to do something in their direction or in another direction that may not be of your best interest. And that's what advertisement is based off of, this idea of perfection. Your life will be great when it gets to this. When you buy that car, when you drink this coffee, when you wear this outfit, when you buy this book. But people don't spend enough time in realizing how perfect they are at this moment. And then from there, what's your goal? Work on it. But when you're buying into perfection, you have all the emotions that come in. First is the height of the emotion. You have this huge spike. And then as soon as the reality of where you currently are by life reminding you, it's like this roller coaster. Now you're down at the bottom and you feel slightly defeated or major defeat. And then it's like next time you see it again, you get that idea of perfection. And it's this back and forth. And some people are so well conditioned into that roller coaster that being off of it seems fearful. They'd rather go through. I feel really great when I watch that commercial, or I put on that, that outfit or whatever it is. But then everything else that goes into it, just because you dress for success doesn't make you successful.
Yep.
So,
Turning
anyway.
our thoughts. No, I agree. Turning your thoughts into reality, right? I mean, you can think that you're, like, I like to play golf, right? I can think that I'm the best golfer in the world, but I'm not, right? I'm not the best golfer in the world. So making sure that not only do we think different ways, but make sure we think, not, I don't want to say realistically, but like you said, like know where you are in life. Like if you may not where you want to be today, but be the best person today you can be. And I promise you'll be the best person tomorrow you can be. It'll stream into, the Bible talks about, worry not of tomorrow's troubles, right? Only worry today because that's enough for today. So if you can, so like today is enough for today. So it's great. I never thought of it like that before, to think, don't worry so much about where you want to be, worry about what you are and make sure that you are doing the things that are going to put you where you want to be in the moment, right? In the present.
Just presence, right?
Yeah.
Present is a present.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Josh, we're probably going to get quite a few requests to do more of these.
Okay, I hope so.
I personally have enjoyed it. It's nice to have those kind of conversations. It's even nice to finally out myself in such a way. Like I said, it's like I'll come in and I'm one of the smallest minorities when it comes to, religious positioning and things like that. Because I'm almost, it'll come across like a contradiction to people. And it's not. I explained it from my place. I highly encourage people to open up a little bit more. The Church of sorry, Josh. It's the Church of non-denominational churches.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, it's, if you're feeling a lot of struggles in life, you know, pop in, go enjoy one. Put this video on again as well. Listen to us have this chat, you know, go through things like that so that for the audience that they can get something, you know, if nothing else, perhaps this conversation will be a life raft at some place for them, that at least if nothing else, they stop treading water and they can at least take a break for a minute to realize other people are up to something and they're working on building a life for themselves as well. Now, find those people around you like Josh and I, that we want to see the best for the people around us. So, and we're trying, we want to be the ants in the bucket with you, not the crabs. Now, we want to see people make these kind of changes and this kind of growth in life and find more satisfaction. Now, be in that place where they're more potent and they can make an impact. Your legend is the story of your life somebody else is willing to share.
Yep.
You know, you can't tell people.
Yeah.
You can't go around telling people that. They
if it
can't.
ended today, you know, if it ended today, what would you think? Would you be happy? Would you be sad? Would you have regret? Like, yeah, I like that. I like how you put that.
Take your stock of your life. So, Josh, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
It was a lot of fun. I love coming on the show. I want to do it again. I don't want to plug myself, but I do have a couple Instagrams. I'm trying to kind of grow and maybe, my fitness one is called Revelation 13 Fitness. I post a lot of free videos on there. I'll do some motivational stuff. I don't get too religious. I mean, it's in the name, but I don't want to get, I like to kind of attract people, like you said, and not kind of put that normal stigma of religion that sometimes people have. So follow me on there for fitness tips. I try, and now that we've kind of had this partnership now, and this, you know, we've had this meeting, I'm going to learn more from you, and I'll try to put more on there to help people, you know, my followers and my surroundings. So kind of just thank you for having me on here. I enjoyed it. It was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Wonderful. Well, you've been a fantastic guest. Like my previous guest, you just, there's a reason why we had the conversation. You know, you're a great person in life. You're a great person on the in the conversation. And I only want to see your success, and the people that get around you, they'll feel it as well. With that, keep it up, and no problem whatsoever plugging it. We'll put in the comment section on the YouTube video. We'll actually put down a link if you don't mind. I'll have just send it over to me afterwards. I'll get you on there so that it's in the description so that people can also follow the link. Okay.
Do you have an Instagram by chance, so I can plug you?
I do. It's just under my name, Chad Brochures.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe I set that up as growing up in the wilds of suburbia Instagram, but I have that, and also a couple of videos that I've done specifically and exclusively for Instagram on IGTV.
Okay.
So yeah, if we're not following each other at the end, we'll make sure that we're both following each other on Instagram as well, because it's nice to see your postings. It's a breath of fresh air in a very polarized environment with a lot of frustration and hostility. It's nice to see yours. You know, it's nice to see what people are putting out there that are actually trying to create a beautiful world, not destroy it. So I appreciate that.
Yep, I appreciate that too. Thank you.
So, hi everyone. This is Chad Everett Brochures, and this is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And this is another episode of Chat with Chad and Joshua McClendon. So, all right, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And again, don't forget, click the notification, as well as don't forget to subscribe and like the video. It'll help with the algorithm so we get more people to see this. So, all right, until next time, stay tuned. And remember, we're all in this together, everyone. So, bye-bye.